Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Thursday afternoon. I think some massive news for Matt Rhule and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Four-star quarterback Trey Taylor committing to Nebraska in the 2027 cycle. Now, the Nebraska fans who've been rocking with the fellas for a while now know we don't normally break these commitments down that are kind of this far out into the future in 2027. Look, I'm making an exception for Trey Taylor for really two different reasons. Number one, as a Michigan fan myself, this was the guy for Michigan in the 2027 cycle. In Nebraska, and Matt Rhule come in, kind of later on in the process and get this one done. But I've watched a lot of Trey Taylor. Very, very high on not only the quarterback that he is right now. I think I'm even higher on what the quarterback he can be over the next couple of years. Kind of a different style of blue chip quarterback this early on in the process, where normally these top 100 kids early on at the quarterback position are kind of fully developed. I think a really good example was Dylan. Like Dylan coming out of high school when he was sophomore going into his junior year was already pretty damn developed. He was already a grown man going into his junior year of high school. Trey Taylor is far from that. This is a kid that is still growing. He is still filling out his frame, but there is a lot to like when you turn on the sophomore film. One, really strong command of what he's doing at the quarterback position. Very accurate passer, 67% completion percentage as a sophomore in high school. Takes care of the football. What I love the most about Trey Taylor is he can be a distributor. He can sit in the pocket and kind of dice defenses up. He's also really creative. And that's something that I'm starting to really value in my college quarterbacks, like quarterbacks that can get themselves out of trouble, get outside the pocket, extend plays to their off platform, be a difference maker as an athlete at the quarterback position. Trey Taylor's that guy. Like he can get it done in terms of running the football, but I think the better attribute that he has is just the sack avoidance and being able to get himself out of trouble. The last thing I'll say here, how about this Nebraska quarterback room? You go back to 24 months ago. This quarterback room was arguably, not probably, it probably was the worst quarterback room that we saw at the Power 4 level. It was a disaster. Didn't really have a quarterback that could run an offense. Fast forward to the next couple of years, looking at the young pipeline of quarterbacks that Nebraska has built. Obviously, it starts with Dylan, who's only going into year two. It feels like he's been with this program for a while, but only year two kid. You bring in Marcos Davila from Purdue in the portal. Really big fan of Marcos. This is a guy that's probably not going to play till Dylan heads off to the NFL, but that kid can rip it. And I wouldn't be surprised if he starts for Nebraska at a time over the next couple of years. You bring in TJ Lateef, blue chip talent from the state of California. Obviously, Dayton coming in 2026, and now Trey Taylor coming into the 2027 class. It went from 24 months ago being a brutal quarterback room into this quarterback play is going to be really good for the next couple of years in Lincoln, Nebraska, which I think should fire up a lot of Nebraska fans because look, when you have your quarterbacks locked in, when recruits at the high school ranks can look at Nebraska and say, hey, I'm going to have really good quarterback play, it's attractive to the wide receivers. It's attractive to running backs. All of a sudden, it gets a lot easier to recruit elite skill to your program when you know you have the quarterback play necessary to have a dynamite offense. That's what stands out to me the most. Want to get a little bit more into Trey Taylor, talk about what he brings to Nebraska, into it as always. To the Nebraska fans, appreciate you guys. And, we always say this. When we started this thing about 3 years ago, didn't have a large audience, right? The Nebraska fans were some of the first fans to really listen to the boys and show the support. Oh, like y'all know, like a soft spot in my heart to the Nebraska fans for the support you guys showed early on in the process for us. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content and are new, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. Without further ado, let's get into Trey Taylor. Look, I think there's a really good chance that this kid finishes as a five-star prospect in 2027. Had a lot of big-time offers from a lot of programs that have some serious history developing quarterbacks. I think LSU was one of those big players for Trey Taylor. Obviously, have done a really good job developing quarterbacks. Maybe this says a little bit about Dana Holgorsen and what his impact is on the recruiting trail. This is a coach in Dana who's been around the block, is a very well-known coach. Even to these kids coming out of high school, like they probably know Dana Holgorsen and who he is and who he's worked with. Has developed a lot of good quarterbacks, has developed offenses where a lot of quarterbacks can come in and put up a lot of numbers, maybe changing the perception from some of these quarterbacks in terms of, hey, I can come to Nebraska. We're going to have an offense that is going to give me the opportunity to really kind of ball out, go to the NFL, put up a lot of production. And I think that matters for a guy like Trey Taylor. Like when you have programs like LSU that are knocking on your door, recruiting you hard, and you're choosing Nebraska, that tells me a little bit about, maybe the impact that Dana has on the recruiting trail, specifically at the quarterback position. Getting into a little bit more of what Trey Taylor is as a quarterback, again, the arm's big. I think it's going to get bigger because this is a guy that is like sprouting out like a weed. He is still developing his frame and his, overall like athletic profile, you might say. A lot of quarterbacks that are ranked this high in the 2027 cycle are kind of physically really developed and kind of tapped out, you might say. Trey Taylor, considered one of the best quarterbacks in the 2027 cycle, to me is not nearly tapped out in terms of what the athletic profile can be. And that's what excites me the most about Trey Taylor. If you were to ask me, what does this kid finish up as in the 2027 cycle, I would not be surprised if we're talking about a bona fide blue chip 5-star quarterback committing to Nebraska in this 2027 cycle. We'll see kind of how this high school career goes. And the one thing I will say here, this is, and I don't know him personally, but I've followed him obviously because Michigan's been going after him for a while. Seems like a really good kid. Yeah, I would be personally very surprised if this one is a roller coaster. This one might be kind of signed, sealed, and delivered. And we'll see. Obviously, with this modern era of college football, you never really know. I would be surprised if this recruiting process takes many twists and turns too. So now if you're Nebraska, you have what I would think is going to be the face of your class in Nebraska for 2027 already committed. And now it's, hey, let's go build around Trey Taylor in 2027. And this will help recruiting in 2026 as well. When you're going after these wide receivers, they want to know they're coming into an offense that's going to have quality quarterback play. Nebraska, it's blue chip city in this quarterback room for Nebraska. That's going to help on the recruiting trail. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.